Max Schmeling wasn't a saint. He was a fighter, a man shaped by the ring, by pain, by glory, and by the brutal discipline of the sport. But perhaps it was precisely this boxing that taught him to recognize the value of silent resistance. Because in the ring, it's not always the loudest who wins. Sometimes it's the one who endures the longest, the one who waits for the right moment to act. And Schmeling acted. When his Jewish friends were persecuted, he didn't hesitate. He used his fame as a shield, his home as shelter, and his courage as a weapon. And all this without fanfare, without cheap heroism, without seeking public redemption. He did it because it was right, because deep down he knew that true strength lies not in fists, but in choices. The Nazi regime tried to use him as a symbol of Aryan supremacy. They put his face on posters, exalted him as an example of the superior race. But Schmeling never fully succumbed to the narrative. He refused to join the Nazi Party. He refused to be a puppet. He fought Joe Louis, the African-American boxer, and lost. But even in defeat, he showed dignity. He visited Louis in the locker room, shook his hand, and acknowledged his superiority. And years later, when Louis faced financial difficulties, it was Schmeling who helped him, discreetly, without headlines, without spotlights, like someone who understands that the real fight is outside the ring. This story is an invitation to reflection, because it breaks the mold. It challenges the idea that every historical figure can be fitted into simple categories: hero or villain, ally or enemy. Schmeling was complex. He was contradictory, and that's precisely what makes him fascinating, because he forces us to look beyond the surface, to see that even within the most oppressive systems, there are those who resist. There are those who choose the most difficult path. There are those who, even surrounded by darkness, light a candle. And perhaps that's what his legacy teaches us, that courage isn't about shouting. It isn't about showing off. Courage is doing the right thing when no one is watching. It's about protecting the vulnerable even when it puts everything at risk. It's about being remembered not for titles, but for actions. And Max Schmeling, the boxer whom the regime tried to turn into an icon, will always be remembered as the man who, in silence, struck a blow against injustice. The post-war period brought revelations that forever changed how Max Schmeling would be remembered. The man who had been used as a showcase for Nazi propaganda, who carried the weight of representing a cruel regime, showed the world that his true fight was not in the boxing ring, but in the defense of human dignity. When the Jewish survivors he had protected told their stories, Schmeling's public image transformed. Suddenly, the boxer whom many saw as complicit with the regime came to be recognized as someone who, silently, had risked everything to save lives. And this revelation not only rewrote his biography but also made us reflect on how we judge historical figures. Because the truth is that, often, the most heroic acts happen far from the spotlight, hidden in the dark corridors of silent resistance. Over the years, Schmeling has become an almost paradoxical figure, the champion who lost to Joe Louis but earned the eternal respect of his opponent, the Nazi idol who, in reality, defied the regime itself, the man who could have lived only as a sporting symbol, but who chose to be remembered as someone who did not bow down to injustice. And perhaps it is precisely this contradiction that makes him so fascinating, because he shows us that history is not made up only of perfect heroes and absolute villains. It is made up of real people with flaws, fears, and difficult choices. People who, in decisive moments, reveal who they really are. Today, when we look back, Max Schmeling's legacy is not just that of a legendary boxer. It is that of a man who proved that courage doesn't need applause, that humanity doesn't need speeches, and that even within the most brutal gears of history there can be room for compassion. He reminds us that, in times of darkness, every gesture counts, that saving a life is, in itself, a greater victory than any championship belt, and that, in the end, the most important fight is not fought in the ring, but within ourselves, between fear and courage, between indifference and empathy, between silence and action.